In part one, Steve and I started at Kasteelspoort National Botanic Garden and climbed up to the back table of Table Mountain in Cape Town. We're now walking around the Hutchinson Reservoir and will visit the museum that has been set up to inform visitors about the history and building of the 5 reservoirs or dams. Join us on our hike and later on our descent down Nursery Ravine back to Kasteelspoort.
Here's one of the little streams. It flows down from the main table onto the back table, and that feeds into the reservoir. There it goes through here. And across the rocks and into the reservoir. This is the area above Hutchinson Reservoir on Table Mountain on the back table, and if you look clearly you can see the evidence of a lot of pine trees that were cleared here. When I was a student in the 70s, this entire area around the dam was a pine plantation and covered in pine trees, and they were taken out about 20 years ago, and all you have now is the remains of the pine logs lying on the slopes, slowly decaying, and beautiful fynbos vegetation re-establishing itself where there once was a pine plantation. Here we are at Hutchinson Reservoir on the top of the mountain, and if we have a look along here we can see the whole wall of the Hutchinson Dam running down, dangerous according to the signage. And then panning around to the right, we've just arrived at the little museum that has been set up to inform people about the building of these dams on the top of the mountain. That's Steve standing next to a fine example of Aloe plicatus, one of our local aloes. I don't think it's a Western Cape aloe. I think it probably comes from the Eastern Cape, but it's a very interesting plant. And outside the museum we've got lots of remains from the old engines and hoists and so forth that were used to construct these reservoir walls. Now we're inside the museum, and here we have Steve signing the visitor's book, and there's some really interesting displays of hydrographs for measuring the depth of the water in the dams. Outlet meters. There's some old photographs about how they constructed the reservoirs. As any good woodworker will tell you, there's nothing better than a sharp implement. So there's the grinding stone, there's the cocoa pan for carrying the stones, and they actually built a railway line from the reservoirs, which they ran with this beautiful little steam engine, which was made by Andrew Barclay and Son, as you can see from the maker's plate up here. And they ran this to a little cableway which they had running down Kasteelspoort. And there's a little locomotive. And here's the locomotive itself on site where it used to work. Here's another site of the old locomotive. This is a very nice image of the original cableway that they used to have running up from Kasteelspoort to the top of the back table, and you can actually see the railway line terminating at the cableway, where they used to then transport rock and other materials to the site of the dam building itself. And for all those of you who thought the old cable cars up the front of the mountain were primitive, this is what the early workers used to get up the mountain to build these dams. And this is an old photograph of the lower part of the cableway running up Kasteelspoort to the top of the mountain, which is where they built the reservoirs up on the top of the mountain. Moving on from the museum at the dams, we actually have the site of the quarry that they used to quarry the stone to build the dam walls. It's rehabilitating very nicely, and you're getting nice lichen cover on the rocks, and I think if most people wouldn't even recognize it as a quarry, except for some of the tumble down stone that's still lying at the base of the cliff.
Steve was very pleasantly surprised to find a paved road winding around the top of the back table. I think he was also very surprised at the dams and the museum up there.
This is the site that we're walking along. This is the site of the old, or the route of the old railway line that used to run from the museum and the dams behind us down to the top of Kasteelspoort. And last time Biggie and I were here, over on our left, over there, we saw the eclipse bringer, which have been recently introduced. I've been keeping my eyes peeled to see if they're around today, but I haven't seen any sight of them so far. So we'll just continue walking along the old railway track until we get to the top of Kasteelspoort. Towards Kasteelspoort, if we look to our right, we can now see the path coming down off the main table, down towards Hutchinson behind me, and over there on my right you can see the 3 huts of the Mountain Club, the Western Province Mountain Club, and the Scout Hut. So they have 3 huts up here. As we approach Kasteelspoort, and we to the right, we can just see the top lines protruding with Table Bay in the background.
We had now hiked from one side of the back table to the other. Steve enjoyed the view from the top of Kasteelspoort, looking down over Buckhoven and the Atlantic Ocean. Our exploration of the back table of Table Mountain and the descent via Nursery Ravine continues in part 3. Please join Steve and I there.